Ian's now going to look at essentially, well, what makes good e-learning? You know, what does this mean? And I'll just pass it over to Ian now.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Well, what I've always been interested, I've been interested in the learner and how the learner learns. And Diane mentioned something about the importance of a sort of cognitive understanding of this. And whenever I go to a conference, you know, you hear people talking about all the latest software and hardware, and we know that all of that exists, but I think there is still a problem with design and the actual content that can put people off. What makes good learning, e-learning? Well, I'm going to look at several points. I think the first area, strategy. At PolyU, we've been working on this LMS, the LMS review, and I think that's probably the first stage in having an effective e-learning strategy. Also helps, of course, if you have a champion of e-learning at quite a high level who can promote it. And also, I think it should be pedagogically led as well. This is something we're trying to do there. Now, what is very important as well, that links in well what I was saying before, this idea of good teamwork. Peter and I, we're learning designers, and some of the projects that we're going to show later on will show you how we work with different faculties and departments, and subject matter experts. But there are various other people involved as well. I think the organization itself, in terms of the social context that the learner finds himself or herself in. And obviously you have the learners as well. So all these people are very, very important. Should add maybe the programmers, software developers as well, in the learning designers section. Yeah, this is an area that I'm particularly interested in understanding how the learner learns and how the learner builds up these structures or schematas. And if the teacher understands, all the people that I showed you in the previous slide, if everybody understands how the learner learns, then I think we're in a better position for the teacher anyway, to talk to the designer. Now, we can't expect the teacher to know how everything works. So that's why we have to have a good team in place. But if everybody understands how the learner builds up these structures, then I think we could come up with more effective content. So one of the areas, this idea of conceptualization, I mean, we want to help the learner learn. We want them to become better learners. And there's this model developed by Terry Mays, the conceptualization cycle. I'd like to link this with the difference of courseware that we develop. Primary courseware, when you're actually introducing the subject, and that helps the learner conceptualize. And it's a sort of iterative process. Various theories in terms of how the learner learns. You have the instructivist approach, the constructivist approach as well that Shay touched on this morning with Moodle. And then the importance of dialogue and reflection. Getting the students to try to, whether it's sharing with other students, using the tertiary courseware, or having meaningful tasks in the second part to help this conceptualization. Now, so you have the teamwork, you have the understanding of the learning processes, and then you have to try to construct these learning applications, these effective learning applications. Could divide this into two parts, the learning applications and the e-learning structures. Basically, following on from a user-centered design approach, basic difference between these two is that the e-learning application, you look at it from a pedagogical point of view. You know, whether it can meet the learning outcomes, whether it has impact on the learning process, whether it's pedagogically sound. And then if you're looking at the e-learning structure, then you're looking more at the navigation. Is that effective? Is it intuitive? And we'll be giving you more information about this before. This is one of the things we want you to do when you look at the showcase examples. Now what's next? Okay. Now, this presentation actually is going to be very visual, and we want you also, when you leave here, is to be able to, you'll have a look at some ideas. We're going to give you a checklist as well, some criteria in terms of what you should look for in an effective e-learning application. But this list is just some very general ideas. What sort of things should you think about? We've touched on a lot already this morning, the importance. Things that technology can do that you just cannot do in the classroom. For example, the importance of collaborative learning. I mean, technology is brilliant for that. The ability to use resources again and again. Things that are quite complex in the real world that you can use in either Second Life or simulations. So these are some ideas that you may like to think about. All right, so I'll hand over now to Peter, and this part is going to be a lot more visual.
So as Ian identified, we had sort of checklists and broad ideas, but if you could spend 2 minutes talking to the person beside you and identify what do you think constitutes good e-learning based on some of the input, the discussion we've had so far. Our plan was then, if we're in the laptop, the room where you could access some of our resources is to give you a chance to explore in a bit more detail the showcase. So what we plan to do next is really almost like a wine tasting. You'll get a sample of a number of different things that you may like or maybe dislike for whatever reason, but at least it's an opportunity to sort of see a cross-section of things that we've done at PolyU. So just for literally 2 minutes, because I'm aware of time, and this part of a discussion may be also things that can be further teased out in the question section at the end. So you need to talk to someone beside you. If you're sitting by yourself, you will probably need to move so you can talk to someone beside you. Okay, so for about 2 minutes, no more than 2, please. Okay. Sorry, I have to apologize to interrupt your conversation. I know you've only just started to break the ice, probably. And this is where, as a presenter in another session, I've seen a colleague take the microphone from the stage, they had a roving mic, and go and find the person sitting in the very back row and ask them for what they discussed. But we won't do that today because the gentleman looks really scared. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, it's the guy with the mic. No, it's okay. Yeah, we'll wait for questions. Yeah, no worries. So, in terms of our showcase,